This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Watch the extended version of this video when you sign up for CuriosityStream and Nebula at curiositystream.com/Jordan. About a month ago, I spent 5 weeks working in a hospital as a medical student, and today I want to talk a little bit about what I learned. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Jordan, and I'm a PhD student in medical engineering at MIT. I make videos about artificial intelligence, emerging tech, and grad life, and if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe or follow me on my other socials where I tend to talk a little bit more about the grad life side of things. And if you already followed me on Instagram, then you've probably seen some of these photos of me working in a hospital, being scrubbed up. I got shadow robotic surgery, and you might have been a little bit confused as to why I was doing that, given that I'm doing a PhD, not an MD degree. The short answer is that my PhD program is part of the Harvard-MIT Health Sciences Technology program, and so we do clinical immersions to gain more experience in the actual hospital system so that we can use that to inform our research. And so if you have nerdy guess, it's going to be a little bit more of a chatty tea time video. I don't actually have tea, but I do have water. Because when I went into the experience of ICM, which is what this 5-week period is called, Intro to Clinical Medicine, I think I had a very different idea of what I was going to get out of it than what I actually did. So first of all, I feel like this doesn't necessarily need to be said. It is a little bit obvious, but spending time with doctors and nurses and medical students and administrators in this hospital did very much make this clear that healthcare workers have been doing such incredible work over the last 2 years. The amount of stress, honestly, that so many of these people are under, and they're still able to perform at such a high level because they have to, because it's healthcare and it's people's lives, is honestly incredible. And I don't think I really understood what things looked like in hospitals during COVID until I had to be in a hospital during COVID. And obviously this was in May, June. So at the time, we weren't necessarily at a peak of the pandemic, certainly not like it was in the first year or two, but it was just really fascinating and also just very sobering to see the amount of stress that all of these people have been through and have still managed to, give excellent patient care the entire time. But also how much they haven't necessarily had the space to reckon with what they've been through. I heard a lot of people talk about essentially having PTSD. And so I think the whole point of this program in theory is that we can take findings from how things work in the clinic, from how we interact with patients, back to our research. And honestly, I don't actually think that there was much that I experienced that would be particularly relevant to my research, but there were a ton of things, including, developing mental health programs or something for healthcare workers who served during the pandemic that I think were problems that I didn't necessarily think about before going into this, and that are problems that I'm actually very interested in now. Now, the next thing that I thought was really interesting that I didn't expect from working in a hospital was that a lot of the people that we saw probably shouldn't have been in the hospital in the first place. And I would say that falls into 2 categories. The first is people who were in the hospital for preventable reasons. So they didn't have health insurance, and so they couldn't get access to earlier care for a chronic condition that they knew that they had. That condition got worse because they weren't getting the appropriate treatment and they showed up at the ED. The second category is people who had received medical treatment, who were on the mend, who didn't necessarily need hospital level care anymore, but for insurance reasons or for home situation reasons, couldn't leave. They couldn't go to rehab because their insurance wouldn't cover it. They couldn't go home because they lived alone on a 5-story walk up and they wouldn't be able to get up and down the stairs or get groceries and stuff like that. And so I think that was something that I just hadn't considered as much when it comes to why people are in the hospital. I think the first category of people who, should have been better served by a social safety net, honestly, is something that I had thought about and just was something that I hadn't one-on-one personally interacted with. But the second category of people who are just kind of lingering in the hospital because they can't go, but they probably shouldn't still be there, was something that I really didn't expect to encounter, and was another one of those problems that, isn't necessarily an engineering problem. A lot of the problems that I think I came across aren't really engineering problems at all. They're a lot more, social problems, healthcare policy problems, and so it was really interesting to see how much that really does impact both the day to day of like how a hospital functions, but also patient care. The third thing that I learned or noticed was that we got to see a lot of very cool technology being used. So we got to see robotic surgeries with the Da Vinci robots, and that was really, really cool to see in person. But I don't think I expected it to make me feel the way that I did. And what I mean by that is seeing someone being operated on by a robot it just felt like I was living in like some weird sci-fi experience. Patient outcomes for these things tend to be better. We should absolutely be using these technologies. It was just a very odd experience to see that, and for my knee-jerk reaction, especially someone who like does STEM, who does engineering, who wants to develop technical systems for healthcare, it was very odd to go into that and then be like, oh, like something about this makes me vaguely uncomfortable because I don't know, I've seen too many sci-fi horror movies of the robot going horribly wrong and like tearing you to shreds. So I think that was just one of those instances of, what you see in media, what you see in hype, and what actually happens in reality, like coming at each other in my brain, and me having to kind of like reckon with that and create a more accurate picture of how these things actually happen and how they work in my head. But it was definitely really cool to see all that stuff. Now, in terms of my favorite part, I think that was also something that I didn't expect. My favorite part of this whole experience was actually hearing people's stories. We got to interact with patients. My air conditioning just turned on, so if you hear that in the background, apologies. It was interesting to take patient histories. It was interesting to have to learn how to give a physical, so now I guess, know how to give a full, physical, which I wouldn't say I can do it very well, but I can, stumble my way through it. But the parts that I really enjoyed hearing about weren't necessarily the medical problems and untangling people's cases and things like that. I was much more interested in, the funny family stories that you end up hearing, or hearing about, the twists and turns that people's lives have taken, and talking to them about that. And so I think I would love to do more work on that in the future, something that I'll perhaps talk about in Nebula Plus version of this or in another video, is the reckoning that I'm currently having with what I might want to do after my PhD, which is still very much up in the air. But I definitely would love to spend more time in the storytelling arena, hearing people's stories, and both in the context of healthcare, but also I've always wanted to do like a documentary series on like how AI has impacted people's lives. And so I think that that's something that I don't know if it's going to tie into my research necessarily, but it's definitely something that I would love to just do more work in, because I thought that that was really fascinating. And then what I would say, I don't want to say this is my least favorite part. I would say this is the part that probably made me the most uncomfortable. And this is something that I'm going to touch on lightly here. If you want to hear more about it, head on over to Nebula, where I tend to talk a little bit more about ideas that are still percolating in my head that I, don't necessarily want to like blast on the entire internet. But I would feel weird about not including in some form of a video. And so I would say the thing that caught me a little bit off guard, I guess, was the vocabulary that we use in the healthcare system to talk about patients, especially as it relates to mental health. But because that's a little bit more of a personal topic, I decided to leave it in the Nebula Plus version of this video. If you haven't heard, Nebula is a streaming platform built by me and some of my friends, including people like Tirzu, Simon Clark, and Jacqueline from Nothing But Tech. On Nebula, you can find ad-free versions of all of our videos, plus Nebula Plus bonus content that you won't find on YouTube. You'll also get access to our Nebula Originals, which you can't find anywhere else, including a very good trivia show where I competed against Brian from Real Engineering and Dave from City Beautiful, and a bunch of fun and bizarre challenges, including trying to build an IKEA chair while solving math problems. And the best way to sign up for Nebula is actually through CuriosityStream, who are kindly sponsoring today's video. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service with thousands of documentaries and nonfiction videos. In fact, if you're interested in learning more about medicine and healthcare, I would highly recommend checking out their documentary series, Secrets of the Brain, where neuroscientist Dr. Jack Lewis goes in search of people with unusual neurological conditions. CuriosityStream loves independent creators and wants to help us grow our platform, so if you click on the link in the description or use my promo code Jordan, you can get access to CuriosityStream for 42% off their annual plans with Nebula included for free as long as you are a CuriosityStream member. That's less than $15 a year. Signing up for CuriosityStream is a great way to directly support my channel while getting to watch my videos ad-free, so sign up for CuriosityStream and Nebula at curiositystream.com/Jordan or using the promo code Jordan. Otherwise, you can check out my other chattier videos up here. You can follow me on my various socials for more grad life content down here, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.